Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown live show coming at you on a Monday morning as usual, although it might be afternoon for you, depending on where you are in the country. As always, I'm joined, who is voluntarily muted himself, Andrew Combo Salop. So perhaps if he unmutes himself, we can unmute everybody and then have him come on and join the show. Andrew Combo, what's going on, my man?
You're focused today, man. You see it all.
Oh, well.
You're like a pure PG today.
Yeah, I'm unmuting you, and it's like it won't let me because it says that you're the one muting yourself. So don't mute yourself, Combo. That's all I have to tell you.
Yeah, man. You're very focused today. I see it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I had a great weekend of sleep, believe it or not.
Important.
And I think I also discovered that I might be gluten intolerant to some degree because I was off gluten for like 10 straight days, and then I had a little bit, and I literally went into a coma and took a nap in the middle of the afternoon for like 3 hours. So I think that maybe I got to cut that out a little bit.
You got to do a controlled study first because it could have been something else you ate, right? You never know.
I mean, it could have been, but I do remember, like, even when I was younger in my 30s, like just, having lunch and just falling asleep in the middle of the afternoon and never not being able to stay awake. So I do feel like there might be something to it. And certainly I just feel better when I don't eat it. So there you go. Maybe some gluten-free pasta is in my future. Okay.
Sounds good.
So we have some things to talk about. I went through the ending of OKC versus Minnesota because these are two up-and-coming young teams who are trying to assert themselves into the conversation of elite teams, per se, and championship quality teams. Mm-hmm. Do you have a take on these teams and whether or not you feel like they're ready for that?
In terms of championship contention?
Yeah.
You know what? I was like really high on OKC in terms of contention, and I still am. Like, I think they're in that pool. Like, I obviously think Denver's going to win it all, but I think they're in that pool. But they're on the outside looking in a little bit. When I watched them play the Lakers, it was really apparent that as much as I like Chet, there might not be enough physicality to hang with the league's best bigs and the guys that could dominate in the paint, like a LeBron and an AD. They looked a little shaky in that area. But I love everything about this team outside of that. I mean, I think Chet filled a lot of gaps in terms of rim protection. SGA continues to get better. Jalen Williams is going to be an all-star. So I love everything that they're doing. And I still say they're title contenders, but that physicality might hurt them. Now, I mean, Minnesota, they got elite defense, and they have a guy that could take you home on offense named Anthony Edwards. So a combination of those two things, the most underrated player in the league coming off the bench, Naz Reid, really love the way he plays basketball. I think they're going to be title contenders themselves, but at the end of the day, like, I think Denver wins it all. So it is.
Let's stay focused. My focus is tight here to this morning. Let's stay on OKC for a little while before I start turning my flamethrower onto Minnesota. Okay. But I agree with you on all the points you made about OKC. There's no question that actually the thing I like about Chet, even though he is doesn't have the physical strength to keep big players out of the lane and get bumped off, he can recover really quickly and still like affect the shot for the most part, yes. Unless it's guys like Jokic, maybe even Embiid in there. I got to look at that more carefully, or certainly AD, LeBron. Those are the guys, or the elite guys down there that can still, despite the second effort by Chet, he doesn't necessarily have the amount of effect he does on everyone else in the league. So we'll know that, Chet will get better at that, right? He will get stronger and less prone to being knocked out of the way. But they could probably use another guy down there to bang a little bit. Now, the question here is, let's get to SGA for a second, because we're talking about MVP candidates, and we're throwing out, it's Embiid, it's Jokic, whatever. I will say that SGA, without a doubt, is firmly in that conversation. His abilities, even like down the stretch when they need him to make tough shots from anywhere on the floor, is unparalleled at that position, in my opinion. I don't think that there's anybody else who's that good across. Even with the threes, he can do step backs, he can do all the mid-range he wants, gets to the rim, draws fouls, all those things he's terrific at. He is ready, right? SGA has spent this whole time in his career. He's now in his prime, ready to go, MVP level candidate, which, by the way, another thing, if we're an American audience here, is sad that, the best American player we have, I guess, is Jason Tatum, and he's probably 6 or 7 in the league. So what does that say about the state of American basketball?
Well, you just totally changed the topic on me right there. But
God damn it. I lost my
But SGA, I mean, is super elite. I mean, one of the most skillful players in the NBA. As you said, a 3-level scorer. I think his game is tailor-made for the playoffs because of his ability to get in the mid-range, late shot clock situations, end of game situations. Like, you just need a player like that. And then he has a good enough team around him, right? Like how Chet filled all those gaps. Like, they really needed that rim protection. And he's been innate at that since high school. Like, the offense came later with him. He's been doing that his whole life. So I think there are contenders, and I believe everything you said about SGA is right. I believe this is the year, because he's more of a quiet guy than Ant Edwards, right? Like, he's not super loud, doesn't talk a lot to the press. He speaks to his fashion more, likes to dress up, has his own unique style. But I believe this is the year when he takes out maybe a Lakers or a Warriors, if those teams even make the playoffs, or a Suns, that everybody learns about SGA that are maybe not, are more casual fans, right? Like, our grandmas will start to know about SGA this offseason, I believe.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, that's a good point. He's going to make a splash, no question. They're actually only a game behind first place in the West, behind Minnesota. So that's an interesting question. Like, Denver is right there as well. And remember, they've kind of seen willing to sacrifice regular season games at the end. They don't care if they get a higher seed because they want to make sure everyone's healthy. So that might play into the equation. Although I still think that Denver should finish in the top 4 at the very least. They're not going to drop, I don't think, that much farther than that. So it would be a really big boost for OKC to have that first or second seed, have home court advantage for most of the playoffs, and get them to the conference finals without question. So I think they could definitely do it. But I do think that they might be looking to upgrade something. It's been a little quiet when I'm looking. We had the Lakers and like D'Lo getting a little sad at the end of last game. He's been playing terrific the last 6 games, but he looks sad. Like, it's weird because normally the players are the last to know when they're traded, right? But did you see all that footage?
Yeah, there's something weird going on there. I don't know if he's going through personal problems, but it seemed to not affect his game on that night. So I don't know what's really going on. The best organizations don't let anybody know, and they just make the trade because because if the trade doesn't go through, you don't want that player to know that he was on the trade block, because that could mess things up. That could mess up chemistry.
Yeah, so, for sure. I mean, it leaks sometimes. It happens. Ask Jaylen Brown. But that was weird. Right. It just seems like that reaction to me would have been like it already had happened. And all right, if that already had, it couldn't have already happened because they let him play. And then, it wouldn't have happened a minute after the game at 10 o'clock at night.
He must like it there if this is the case, right?
What's that?
That's it. He must really like playing for the Lakers if this is what is true, if this is true about the trade. Yeah.
Weird. I mean, remember, we saw this with Russ last year too, where he was it last year or maybe toward the end, he was on the bench, like, just trying to high five AD and LeBron, and like, please, like, don't trade me. Like, they got that kind of vibe going on. So maybe, it kind of gets out there and they hear some things, and maybe, if it's LeBron being the GM, I don't know, but something was weird. And usually I dismiss that kind of stuff as thinking like, you're just reading into it, but it definitely felt strange and off. And when they've been talking about D'Lo as a trade trip, which, by the way, I don't necessarily mind, but man, when he plays offense like he plays, like, they need that on the Lakers. If they don't have that, they're really in trouble. They're not going to be able to win a lot of games.
D'Lo has that unique ability of always being able to get a clean look up, even when things aren't going to plan. And you need players like that in the NBA. And when he's playing at his best, he's really tough. I mean, he's a 3-level scorer. He plays the pick and roll well, and he's an underrated passer. I mean, the guy is super skillful. He's just inconsistent. Yeah,
the passing is really what I wanted to say. And as well, he dropped off a little bit in like a couple games in the playoffs, and then the cloud came in over him and never left. It was weird that happens to certain players, and I don't know if he deserved it or not. He's not like a defender, really. But getting back to, let's pivot to the SGA for a second. He leads the league in steals. So not only is he doing everything they need to do on offense, but he makes plays on defense. And he's gotten to the point now where you got to be a little bit careful where he is when you're making passes, because he'll step in, knock passes away, get steals. So let's pivot back to the OKC thing. So the question here is like, will they try and make a trade? Is Giddey maybe part of that? Like, is he becoming the odd man out? I don't know. I still like the way he plays. And it's a nice team. They're really young. They've been growing up together. Maybe let them have, one more, playoff round or playoff season to see what they really, really have. And then they can ascertain from there, because they certainly have picks. They have ways they can make plenty of moves. But I would imagine if they were going to make a move, it would have to be, they probably want someone more physical, right? A bigger guy down low to play a 4.
3 and D.
3 and D.
I mean, because I think some of Josh Giddey's skill set, now it's always good just to have another good basketball player on the court, right? Like, that could make plays and stuff like that. But he's not a spacer. I think SGA gets even more space with a guy that has more gravity than Josh Giddey, even though Josh Giddey's a really good basketball player. Like, I don't know if he fits SGA to a T, even though they figure it out because they're just two really good basketball players. SGA is just a really great basketball player.
For sure. Now, Braun is with us as always. Best friend of the breakdown, Braun. Thank you so much for being part of the show and giving us a super chat. If you want your questions answered, the best way to do it is over on YouTube with the super chat function. We'll put your name up there. We'll give you a lot of love. Thank you. Keeps the lights on. And so, Braun, always great to see you. Always there for us. He says, "Hey, Coach. OKC probably sets the most guard-to-guard screens in the NBA. I think they have one of the most unique offenses, and that's without question because when you have Chet out there too, they can invert things." With him, Dort as well makes things hard because they think he's not a shooter when, in fact, he can make threes at an above-average clip if he's wide open like they want to guard him a lot of the time. And really fantastic at getting downhill. I don't know if Dort gets enough credit for that. He really is great at driving the ball into the lane. So they have a lot of weapons. And then we talk about Williams. I love Williams right now. He's just a mean, unintimidated young guy who's going to just, I think all-star is in his future for sure. So without question, they run the sets, like even down the stretch when I was watching them run against Minnesota, which we're going to get to in a second. They were running the plays all the way through to the third and fourth options. And then what they can do is after they get the defense stretched out and move around, they can then hand it off to SGA, who can just go to work with a little bit more of a spaced floor. So they have everything, man. They have movement, they have good offense, but then they also have the closer when they need it down the stretch.
Yeah, Dort is like Bruce Brown in the sense he's never going to get the credit he deserves until he wins a championship.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like a really good player, and then once they win a championship, and it probably won't be this year, but I'm hoping for them sometime in the future they're gonna be like, this guy Lou Dort's a winning player, and he'll probably get paid after that championship. Oh,
without question. And by the way, I just checked this. I had forgotten. He's actually shooting 42.5% from three on almost 5 a game. So
that's valuable, man.
I want to watch a lot of those because I suspect that they are wide open still because they were really giving him a lot of space. And that might go down, but there's no reason why you can't keep it in the average range in the playoffs if they start closing out on him.
How would that team look with a clone of Lou Dort instead of Josh Giddey?
Another Lou Dort
instead of Josh Giddey. You think, or you think the playmaking would be too much to make up with the spacing? Like, do you think that team would be better?
I don't know if that's the solution. Because again, and we have to make sure we understand that Lou Dort is an elite defender of the elites. Right. So if you had another one of those guys and who can all like they're saying like a 3D, yes, but maybe a little bit bigger. I think, right? I think we want a Lou Dort who's like,
I'm just saying, like you take away the playmaking of Josh Giddey, but you give SJ even more gravity and then better defense as well. Like I wonder how that would look.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And again, you don't want to have to ride Shai Gilgeous that much if you don't have to, right? And it's nice to have somebody else who can take.
But maybe Jalen Williams could take a little bit more on of the ball handling eventually.
He's as well. So they have options out there.
Yeah,
and they're probably like one player away from solving this into a championship team. They're close. I like the young guys.
Well,
Joe, I really like when he's out there playing.
They got the player that exactly they needed. He just happens to be really young. Like Chet fills every gap.
Oh,
he just happens to be a rookie, he was like the perfect guy for them.
Right. So the development of him might end up being what unlocks that as well. You probably, they certainly could find one more player out there and they've got the assets and the picks so they could do it. They could be patient as well.
They were talking about marketing.
Yeah, no, we talked about that. I really like marketing for that team. That would be great. He would probably fit in really well.
Yeah, I mean, and they're winning now, so that's an issue for them almost.
Yeah, right. Exactly. There it is. Utah again. Like everyone forgot about them, and then they're going to take the Lakers spot in the playoffs if the Lakers aren't careful. Now,
crazy.
Let's talk about this game between the top two teams in the West. We have Minnesota. We have OKC, and OKC wins. Right. It was a very close game down the stretch. The guy who I think is going to end up holding the Timberwolves back. Who's
Rudy?
that?
Cat?
It is Cat. Let's go through Cat. Down the stretch, what I see is he gets open for a pretty good open little runner.
Thumbs up. You must be saying something right.
Yeah, he blows a little runner. He then reaches in on somebody who drives and then gets off balance and then just bumps into the guy for it. And I don't know if it was an and one, but gave him 2 free throws. And then at the end, when they needed to just double with not a lot of time left at the half court, they get Jalen Williams to cross the half court into the coffin corner. They get a double, and he just flops to try and try and take a really weak charge. It's a foul on him. Instead, he fouled out, and he's not there for the last couple possessions. So I think I'm missing one other thing that was driving me. Did I write it down? There might have been one other play he did. Oh, well, then the other problem I have is coaching. I have to tell you, I'm sorry. I'm a little bit concerned with the coaching. They called timeout. They did call a timeout after a rebound, but because they advanced the ball a couple steps, they have to inbound in the backcourt, right, and not at the half-court line, which then takes away a good potential sideline out of bounds play for them. That's a mistake. Now, I did spy Chris Finch like kind of trying to call the timeout, like sort of on the rebound, but the players need to know that too. They need to just, as soon as the guy gets it, call timeout. So that's an indicative of something that's lacking there. But then they run an out of bounds play when they're down by 3, and they have McDaniels set a back screen and then fly out to the top, which would be perfect. And he was wide open. That both players went to the guy he was screening for, but the play was basically to have him continue curling into the corner near the sideline instead of just popping out and getting he didn't read it. The play didn't give him an option for that. And they miss a wide open opportunity to tie the game on a 3. I was shocked. Now let's go back later. Then they have a chance to tie it again down 3, and Lou Dort comes flying out of nowhere and fouls the shooter because the OKC Thunder didn't take a foul in the backcourt with 6 seconds to go, up by 3. Huge no, huge mistake. Daigneault is a really good coach. I don't know if he told him to foul in that huddle. We got to look at the last, if anybody asked him about it. But that's also a huge mistake that you can't do, and you need to be better at that as a coach team on the OKC side as well.
So I talked to a friend who works in the NBA, and he told me Cat was the most talented big man in the NBA. He could do everything but win.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a lot of issues there with him, and I think decision-making becomes down to it. I think it could be an emotional stability as well that kind of that leads to bad decisions down the stretch. So I'm concerned that, like, if you have him as your, number, by the way, now he's number 2, right? Which I thought was a much better spot for him, but he might have to be a number 3 if you want to get to the NBA finals. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
I mean, that good.
Or he's just, you don't believe he's a fit on a winning team. Yeah.
So I said a lot of stuff there. Do you want to by the way, and the Anthony Edwards thing, who we all love, thinks he's going to be an MVP candidate. We need him. We need him to become the best American pretty soon. He gets 3 free throws to tie the game and blows the first 2, and then doesn't hit the rim on the miss and the intentional on the third. I mean,
and then he complained that that you can't touch SGA. You can't touch him, or he gets the foul call after the game. And then SGA had like a spicy IG caption.
Oh, what was it?
Oh, I'll get that for you in 1 second. I could talk to you about SGA and Edwards as I bring this up. I feel like Anthony Edwards is probably not the player SGA is right now, but I feel like if I'm a GM and I take one player for the rest of their career, I'll probably go with SGA. Don't you agree?
I mean,
I'll go with Anthony Edwards. Sorry.
Right. I knew where you were going with that. And I think that maybe like you're talking about ceiling, right? Anthony Edwards could conceivably have a higher ceiling than SGA. But by the way, that ceiling is so high at that point that, you can't even see it. That, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's ridiculous.
But the athleticism, the skill set, the mentality allows him to have that ceiling. So Shea on his IG caption, they talk about me for my post game, not my post game.
They talk about me about my post game, not my post game.
They talk about me for my post game. Get it? Not for what I say after the game. I'll break it down.
Right. Oh, I get you. Wow. There's levels there. Good for him. Also,
drop a Don DeMarco to that, Coach Nick.
Right. And by the way, the other thing with SGA, I need to go look at some of the other shooting fouls he got, but like there was one down the stretch where, Conley just turned his body and like got in his way, and it was a foul, and it was easy to call, and he got the 2 free throws. So he might have even missed one of those free throws, as my memory serves. And meanwhile, I believe the Timberwolves had way more free throws than the Thunder. So if you're having a deficit with one player like that who's getting the line so much, well, the best way to combat that is you get your own free throws and make those. In fact, let's look at that real quickly if I can find that. That's the box score real quick. I'm kind of curious what the finish was here. Oh, no, Hornets Timberwolves is today. Gosh darn it. Was it yesterday? What is time? Or that was it Saturday. When did they play?
What is time?
What is time?
We've been doing this over 2 years.
Here it is. It was Saturday. Let me just look. So really quickly, the Thunder were from the free throw line 30 of 35, while the Timberwolves were 21-29. Okay, so actually, I thought I saw a tweet that said somebody had that the Wolves had more free throws. They did not, and they shot a little bit worse. But that's those are the breaks. SGA knows how to draw fouls, legit fouls that the referees simply have to call because it violates the rules. We have another super chat though. We have one from Ken C. Thank you, Ken. Thank you for being so generous. Really, really appreciate it. He goes, will the Thunders and Timberwolves become like the Jazz from a few years ago? Ooh, what are the Jazz a few years ago?
I mean, I remember the Mitchell-Gobert combination, right?
Oh, right. You know what? It's been so long. I forgot about them. So they really are dominating regular seasons and then they kind of flame out in the playoffs.
Oh, I don't know. I appreciate the super chat. I don't know exactly what he means by this.
I think that's probably what he's talking about. Remember, the Jazz were like 2 or 3 in the conference in a couple of those years, right? If my memory serves. Yeah. And we're really hammering teams in the regular season and then could not, Rudy became a problem sometimes on defense and Donovan maybe not come up as big as they needed him to. I don't think so. I think the Thunder are deeper. You know what I mean? I think that they got more weapons. They just feel like, to me, a better team. Now the Wolves could very well be the Jazz. That's probably a really good thing for me. I'm just like I said, Cat is an issue for me. The coaching is an issue for me, and until they prove me wrong, which I really hope they do, I can't pick them going much farther than the first round of the playoffs.
Should the coach get some kind of I don't know if praise is the right word for having these two bigs and figuring it out with them too when it was so disastrous last year?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Okay. Because was it disastrous? I guess it was. It didn't look good, and everyone was really.
I mean, it was good. It was okay for the playoffs when they gave Denver somewhat of a fight, I guess. But in the regular season, it wasn't good, Bob. Yeah. As you that's what you say, right? It wasn't good.
Suboptimal.
Suboptimal. Yeah.
Let me just look at last year because my brain is melting down here. So they would see 23rd in offensive rating and 10th in defense, right? I think remember that was part of it too. It's like, well, they're not even playing elite defense with this group, and now they are. This year they have been number 1. Let's see, they're still first, in defensive rating on B-Ball Ref. Their offensive rating, by the way, is 19th. That is a little bit troubling. You can't be an elite team without closer to top 10 in both. So all of that seems to indicate, but at the very least, yes, they're getting the defense they need is important. Why it took that long, I don't know, but that credit is deserved. Well, actually, hang on, let me see. Last year, they were right now they're 19th in offensive rating. Last year they were 23rd, so they've improved a little bit, but I don't know. I just don't love the team. I don't like the pieces as much, and they all fit together. I think they're all in just sort of disjointed timelines in a way that it's not working for me. I don't feel great about the Timberwolves overall.
It's fair to say you don't like the fit of the T-Wolves as much as you like the fit of OKC.
I think that's it. Yeah, I think the fit is part of it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. So, I think the fit. I just think when you have Anthony Edwards with elite defense, you have a chance.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Denver for a minute because you mentioned them, and I definitely have to think that they still deserve to be favorites to win it, even if they don't have the best record in the West. And Jokic is on a bender right now. 12 games. You want to hear what the last 12 games are?
I got a hot take.
Oh, well, you give me your hot take while I find that goddamn tab of the last 12 games. Okay, but go ahead.
There's a chance if just Jokic stays like this, he could widely be considered better than Steph, I think, eventually. I don't know about LeBron, but Steph, what do you think?
I mean, yeah, it's funny because we had the same idea about Luka, right? Because Luka seemed to be primed to average 30, 10, and 10, right? And if he did that for 7 straight years.
Yeah, what's that? I mean, Luka's on that same kind of trajectory. The only thing is Jokic is clearly the best player in the league right now, and the gap is widening between him and whoever the second best player is,
Well, listen, you got to say Embiid's having a monster year, so I don't know.
He's just not the player Jokic is, though, in terms of connecting the team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, because Luka's at 33.6 points per game.
He's ridiculous, too.
9 assists, 8.3 rebounds. I mean, that's Hall of Fame. But so yes, so I agree. Jokic has maintained or increased his lead. I mean, for how good Embiid is, Jokic is different for a lot of reasons. And the passing, I think, it just makes him that much more dangerous. But let me give you the numbers here because they're quite impressive over the last 12 games. And please stay tuned. I think today it's coming out, the video on Jokic and how he's doing it. He is averaging over the last 12 games. And remember, he had a stretch before this where he was kind of not shooting well at all for a few games, and everyone was wondering what the heck's going on. So he probably was like injured and then got healed and no one said anything. But the last 12 games, 33 minutes a game, 25 points. He's shooting 74.9% from the field overall, 57.1 from three, although he only takes, a little over one a game. 85.5 from the free throw line. He gets less than 5 attempts per game, by the way. Speaking of like Embiid and those guys who are getting fouls, man, Jokic does not get a lot of whistles. He's getting 10.9 rebounds and 8.8 assists per game. Just monster stuff, and 1.3 blocks. Like he's now, he's making plays on the other end too. And in that time frame, they're 8-4, which is really interesting. They're not elite on the record wise over the last 12 games, and we could discuss that for a second.
Discuss. Tell me more.
Well, they don't shoot a lot of threes. They are, I think, dead last in 3-point frequency. Even though they do shoot them well, they don't shoot a lot, and I don't think they shoot enough.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that is?
Well, they're number one, and they don't run pick and roll. By the way, they hardly run any pick and roll. It's all cutting, it's all post ups, and running everything out of Jokic. Right now, most of the time, it looks like, certainly recently, they're going to let Jokic do his thing and try and shut down everybody else. So they want to stay home on the shooters for the most part. You can see, in those last 12 games, there are moments when, yes, they do double off of one pass away off a shooter, and he goes boop, and it's a pass and an easy shot, and they nail the three. So they don't do it as much, and as a result, they're not getting a lot of threes that way.
I think they save the pick and roll for like special situations. Like they don't even show all their cards, because remember they were going 5-1 pick and roll with Jokic and Murray. Yeah, at the end of some of those games in the finals, and that was really dangerous. I think we talked about this before, but I mean, they have so many options that they don't even need to go to pick and roll often, but they can whenever they want. And obviously, Jokic could be a roller, but Murray could be a roller as well. Aaron Gordon could be a roller as well. They just have so many options.
I have a hot take. The Aaron Gordon trade might be the best trade ever made in the NBA.
He is great,
and all they gave up was they gave up Gary Harris and. I looked it up.
So not to plug my other shows, but I have a show called He's With Us. It's actually an in-studio show, and I was arguing with my debating, I shall say, with my co-host Ash, that I believe Aaron Gordon is better with the Nuggets, but he believed Aaron Gordon was a better player with the Magic. What say you?
He's a much better player with the Nuggets. As a player, you know what I mean? That way, like his passing, his assists now are fantastic. You know what I mean? His gravity on cuts is immense. Let's see. He's not shooting threes that well, unfortunately. He's never shot well from three. Let's see. He's under 29%. Last year he was at 35%, and the year before 33%. So he was like capable, sort of in the sniffing like average. I bet you it'll get back up to 33, 34%. So now, and before that, it was never much before that good anyway. So there might be a production thing where you saw him a little bit higher production in Orlando, but not that much more. And now I'm telling you, the things he does defensively, he's a much better player on the Nuggets. It's not even a question.
I agree.
So yeah, so you're right. Now the thing with what else do they do? So they do. So when you look at the losses of the last 12 games, the 4 of them, and even in the whole season, most of them you'll see a slight to a big advantage by the other team in threes made. Not all the time, but I would say of their how many games have they lost? 10. Let's see here. Gosh darn it all my tabs are messy. That don't have Messi. So they lost 14 games. I want to say 10 of them, they were outscored in 3-point makes. And so that makes me a little bit worried, although perhaps they're going to just start to, hunt them more as they get closer. They're going to need to. I think they need to increase that frequency a little bit more. They can't be last in 3-point frequency. They're going to need to have more because they're going to come up against a team at some point in the playoffs that's going to get hot. They're going to nail shots. Whether that's going to happen 4 times in a week, to beat them is another discussion. But if they're going to want to avoid a couple of those bad losses that are going to be heartbreaking to them, they're going to have to get up more threes. And they have 3-point shooters up the wazoo. I mean, you're talking about KCP. You're talking about, oh my goodness, let me get the thing up here. You're talking about Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Reggie Jackson, solid. Even Christian Brown is shooting, 37%, which is probably a little bit above average at this point. And then Jokic himself is a shooter from back there, and that never takes contested ones. but is still a good shooter from back there.
I'd be interested to look at Michael Porter Jr.'s shooting numbers because I believe he could have shot it even better in that playoff run and in the finals. And if he would have done that, I mean, they had an all-time run in itself. If MPJ just shoots a little bit better, it gets even worse for the rest of the league. And I think he could do that.
Oh, he can. He for sure. It's funny because we see that every once in a while someone will drop that workout he's doing on the gun where he doesn't miss. And then most good shooters do that. They don't really miss. They could go 85% on it with a gun. Nobody guarding them. Maybe higher. Steph could probably be 90.
Steph's probably, I would assume Steph would be over 90 easily, right?
I mean, maybe I don't know. I mean, 90 is amazing, right? Over that many shots, like they take 100, a couple hundred shots. 90 is 90.
I think on average, if Steph takes 100, I'd say it'd probably be like 94, 95, right? Wide open.
Maybe. I mean, we could find out. Should I send a text and see if I get it back before the end of this?
Tell Steph, Combo's asking what you make out of 100 threes.
Let's see how many makes out of 100 would Steph have just using
catch and shoot
the gun
10 spots
with no D.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if we get an answer. Okay. I mean, okay. 90, 93. I would say 90, but let's see if it's higher than that. All right. But let's talk about so either way, what's fascinating about how he's doing this is obviously it's the post, right? And everything operates as a spoke of a wheel around a spoke, and that is Jokic. But yes, they'll run Jokic a little pick and roll himself, ball handling, and Jamal Murray will be the guy that's setting screens and popping out. Obviously, Murray setting a screen, then coming around the top for a handoff by Jokic is a killer. And they have, they don't even have to have a lot of complicated offense to get him ball in the post. Like he'll just dribble the ball into it from bringing it up and instantly bend the defense out of shape. So there's nobody else in the league. Embiid doesn't even do it like that. And again, the passing is really what becomes a problem because you can choose to let Jokic get his, which is sort of what's going on, right? They don't want to do it. You'll see really bad doubles. You can't double one pass away off a cutter. It's boom. It's over. But what I like about how Jokic does it is he'll throw like lob passes to cutters. So he'll just sort of toss it up where they're going to be in a couple seconds from then, and then they run into it versus somebody trying to force it into right into the guy's hands. A very creative way to do it and really, really effective.
Yeah, I mean, probably how many passes you think have been better than Jokic in the history of the game? Like probably Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Jason Kidd probably is up there. LeBron James. Well, he's probably like a top.
We put Jason Williams in that list?
No, Jason Kidd.
But what about White Chocolate?
You know what it is, though? He is, I mean, I love Jason Williams, but it's tough when, can we put Kyle Korver with the greatest shooters?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you can, because Jason Williams is not the level of player those guys are. But, I mean, when you're just strictly talking passing, I think he's up there,
Yeah. I mean, because it's also the creativity.
Pistol Pete?
Right? What?
Pistol Pete?
Pistol Pete, because you didn't mention John Stockton, who's the all-time leader in assists.
That's true. I didn't.
Why didn't you?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm not. I'm sorry. I was accusatory. But, hey, Combo, why didn't you include John Stockton?
He slipped my mind.
I don't think he slipped your mind. I
know where you're going. I know. Trust me, I know where you're going.
Would slip, a bounce pass to Malone half the time, and then he'd throw a nice little pass. This, easy pass to the open shooters on time, on target, beautiful, whatever. It's a totally different skill than when you have Jokic or you have Giddey even does this, or it's Şengün, or Bogut. Some of those guys that could just see the floor and throw. Or Magic is probably the best example of them all because they just have a whole different level of vision and willingness to throw insane passes. Manu is up there, right?
I think Magic is probably the best passer in transition ever, right? Easily.
Yeah. I mean, listen, at a time when layups were not permitted, basically, he would just generate layups for his teammates. Layups, not even just like open shots, whatever, layups.
I do think LeBron is a better half-court passer than Magic.
LeBron is a better half-court passer than Magic. I mean, he could be. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting, but LeBron has got to be up there. I mean, his passing as well. Although I feel like I haven't.
Luka's special. Luka's special. Luka's a special.
Oh my God,
passer.
Luka. Right. Well, it's also the willingness to throw the crazy passes, the weird angles, the small openings, the cross the court. all that stuff it's a different type of passing. So we need to probably create another genre for that. You know what I mean?
There's a viral video going around of Milos Teodosic of
Oh,
Serbia.
he's the best. My favorite.
Best ever?
He could very well be. I mean, and by the way, Pistol Pete in that same way, he's like another Pistol Pete in that, throwing underhanded full court passes and stuff like that. We already talked about this. How do you create a player like that, right? I think most coaches just shrug and are happy that they have that guy when he happens to show up and walk through the door. But I'm convinced that there must be a way to create that and somehow either encourage it. I think we talked about this before. Do you remember this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I do think passing is probably the most innate skill in basketball and the hardest to teach.
Ooh, the hardest to teach. I think it's a personality thing. I think that someone like Manu or Magic or all the other guys we talked about who are, the insane passers, I think that they derive a lot of pleasure out of setting a teammate up with a crazy pass like that. And I don't think a lot of other players have that same pleasure, and they don't do it because they don't derive it. You know what I'm saying?
I disagree. I feel like I think you're right that they do have a pleasure in making their teammates better for sure. But I think there could be a player that would love to give their teammates the best passes possible, but they just don't process the game in that way. Like they just can't see it. There's some players that just can't see it. They can't read the game. The game wasn't meant for them from a mental processing point of view. Can you improve on that? I'm sure. Like I know Carol Dweck wrote a book called The Growth Mindset or whatever the name of the book was. Like you want to have that mindset, but I believe like ball handling, shooting, athleticism are way easier to acquire than the ability to pass the ball at a high level. There probably is a way to do it if we figure it out, but I just think that's the most innate skill in basketball.
That's fascinating. I mean, because as soon as you start saying it's impossible or it's too hard to teach,
I didn't say it's impossible.
Like, okay, let's teach it. Let's figure that out.
No, I didn't say it's impossible. I just said I think becoming a better shooter is a lot easier to get done than becoming a better passer. You know what? I mean, I think from a team aspect, if more teams would implement what they do overseas, like playing no dribble full court, I think that could definitely help.
Okay.
Like stuff like that, like from a team aspect,
And I'll throw this out there. I was that kind of passer, right? I would, generally throw those kind of passes, especially like in pickup after college and just, because I was comfortable in the level I was playing at. Whereas like at the high school level of varsity, I was in a box, like I wouldn't dare, throw too many of those because I'd get yanked. Right. But, so the question then is I don't know if I processed it anymore. I think I just wanted to try and throw those passes, right? And I wonder, yes, if you could sort of think or teach the processing, method here, where it's like, okay, here's a pin down in front of you. You can wait an extra second for the cutter coming off the screen, because if he's open there, he'll be open another couple steps later. It's the screener who can slip and be open that you can wait a little extra time, right? And then sneak that one in there. Like those kind of cool looking passes that are not necessarily that fancy or crazy angles. But like, for instance, I know I've taught that, and perhaps out of that, you can begin to explore and expand, and I know I've had moments in practice where I've been like, okay, every pass you throw has to be a weird, crazy kind of pass. It has to be behind the back, over the head, around the whatever, through the legs.
I mean, that's interesting in itself, that with the crazy passes, but sometimes what separates like the okay passers to the very good passes is just the ability to make the right pass over and over again, even if it's not spectacular. Like just like Scotty Barnes was like that out of college. Like he wasn't like a Magic Johnson, a LeBron type passer, but really struck me about his game is like he always made the right pass.
Yeah.
Like always made the right pass. Like nothing too crazy. Nothing too out of ordinary. He would even touch it with two hands, sometimes too much. Like I like guys who could pass it with one, but he always made the right pass over and over and over again. And that's why I liked his game so much.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, all that is great. I do think that there's an extra level of play you get when you have someone who can open
100%.
the game up like that. And I think that's 100%. What we're seeing from Jokic.
Yeah.
They're only 7th in offensive rating right now, the Nuggets, overall, and primarily because of the threes. If they took more threes, I have no doubt, because they have the shooters, they'd be number 1 with a bullet. So there's an example of like, and again, are they saving it, or are they just kind of having?
Is it that they play through Jokic so much that?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned earlier, they're playing through Jokic, which they do anyway all the time. But like they're just staying home a lot more, it looks like to me, on the shooters, and so he's
makes sense. That actually makes sense. Like I wouldn't double Jokic,
Yeah, but meanwhile, then that does open up for like backdoor cuts and that stuff. And so again, this getting back to the original hot take, which was the Aaron Gordon trade. Here is the trade. Here, let me just tell you. I'll get it up in front of me. The Nuggets were able to give away R.J. Hampton and Gary Harris and a first-round pick in 2025, which probably won't be very good because the Nuggets will continue to be very good, right? It'll be the end of the first round. And then meanwhile, Orlando sent back Gary Clark and what's his face? Aaron Gordon. And that solved everything for them, right? They had a guy who could guard LeBron and rugged who could guard other bigs. He can pass. They didn't know that, I don't think, at the time. He's a good passer, a great cutter. So obviously, Jokic's favorite target is Aaron Gordon. He gets more assists. He gives more assists to Aaron Gordon than anybody else on the team by far. And it really is just one of those moments where it was like it catapulted them to title contention, and will continue to be that way until they all retire.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I wonder if they'll change their shot profile over the course of time. But I feel like Jokic is getting a lot of like tough, not tough. I mean, they're not tough for him, but just like mid range and some post ups and things to that effect. That's probably taken away from the amount of threes that they get.
Yeah, I mean,
like just going to him so much, like he's getting 35 a game or whatever he's getting,
Oh, Jokic is, he's still only scoring like 24. He's not going nuts on the.
But, in this last game I saw him, he got 35.
Yeah, but again, it's the cutting. They lead the league in cutting frequency.
Here's another thing: like Jokic's shooting numbers are a little bit down from last year too.
They cannot be. Well, I guess
yes, they are.
Yeah, and I think that's part of that is that he had that 5-game stretch, maybe a little bit longer before this, where he was really off. So it'll go back up. That will be an anomaly. He'll get back to whatever he normally is, if not better. I think he'll have the way this is going, he'll finish the season off with his highest averages, I bet, or close.
Oh, really? Okay. We'll see.
I mean, it's hard to imagine him getting less. Now, let's talk really briefly about Jokic, the method he does, because we all know about the Sombor shuffle, right? He shoots off the right foot and shoots the right hand. And all manner like step backs. He'll do it off of jump hooks. So I've kind of studied this now this morning to try to figure out what the advantage is on that. And I came up with something I think that's interesting. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
So if he steps, like let's say he's on the right side of the lane and he steps with the right foot, a lot of times guys are going to go left, right off both feet and do a jump hook. He will step off the right foot only, which gives you maybe a few inches or maybe a foot farther away from the defender. But when you lift the left leg, the inside foot leg, it's closer to the defender. That kind of makes sure the defender has to keep his distance, because otherwise he will make contact with that left knee that's coming up into the air as he's shooting, and that would be a foul. So I kind of think that's what he's developed as a way of like a shield. That left knee comes up and then gives him a buffer where they can't block it and they can't get close enough.
That's interesting. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like if you do try and get to it, you'll probably hit the leg and foul him, right?
Yeah. Or you're just going to hit it and then you can't get closer because that leg is big. The whole body, all the limbs are big. This one's a big limb, and it will hurt. Nobody wants to have pain, I don't think, out there when they're defending anybody. I do want to say that speaking of the 3-point shots, he never takes contested ones. The reason why is because it's so slow, that release behind his head. KP blocked one in that, against the Celtics down the stretch for that reason, right? That's why he won't ever really take them when they're contested. So that's why the percentage is going to be so high. But when they need him to, and he's there, he comes, off of the trail. It's one of those things where it's like there's just no real way to guard him because you don't have anybody big enough to be able to handle him. I mean, KP is tall enough, but still can't handle him when he's down there. And then you have someone like we saw Horford try and do it, and he was, equally challenged because he's shorter and can't really affect anything above. So you have a problem there. Who's the only guy who could maybe do it, who's big enough and strong enough?
No, what, you think Embiid could guard him?
I mean, Embiid got handled on the one time. They weren't really having him guard him. So when I watch all the makes against
they did the Lakers thing where like they put AD in the background,
Yeah.
Like the Lakers tried to do that.
Yeah, I got to study that because that would be the only time. AD is the one guy who's probably strong enough and tall enough to do it. But other than that, I don't know if it matters for the Nuggets because the Lakers might not get that far.
Yeah.
Are the Lakers going to make the playoffs?
Yeah.
Okay. You think so? Because, right now they are – where are they? Standings. Come back. Right now the Lakers are they're actually 9th. They're 500. And so they're primed to be in the part of the play-in tournament. So, okay. The Rockets are a game behind them, and the Warriors are one more game behind that. And that's probably about it. So, okay, that's pretty fair. I think they'll at least make the play-in and then, sneak into the playoffs. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I just believe like if LeBron and AD are healthy, they're going to figure out a way to make it happen. And it looks like from the way D'Lo was acting after the game, they're going to try and make some moves. And maybe just the fact that they're going to shake things up, even if D'Lo's not the guy that should go.
Yeah.
You usually go through a honeymoon phase in that process. And I think they'll have some success in the second half. I mean, look, like it's going to be tough to win a championship, but I think they'll make the playoffs.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't think they're going to make it into the regular, the top six.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
But,
we'll get to see LeBron in the play-in.
Right. Now, the other thing we're forgetting is the Clippers. They have a guy like Zubats who could be a little bit effective, at least in kind of trying to contain Jokic a little bit. I think it hasn't looked great in the past, but he's big enough at least. And they have the other parts that could compete in theory. But again, it's Aaron Gordon becomes the X factor because he's so big and strong as well that you have to have two guys now to deal with that.
Yeah, and he moves well without the ball, which always keeps the defense head on a swivel. Like he's always moving, and he has great hands, and he can go right up. And Jokic just garner so much attention.
Yeah. And by the way, so stay tuned. I know you got to run in a minute, but stay tuned for the video because I'm going to talk about why he goes off 1 foot, the right foot and right hand jump hook by Jokic. I have another take about his no look passes that is interesting. I'll save that for the video, so come back and watch that when it's done.
Talk about him playing water polo.
Yeah, I'll talk about him playing water polo as well because we have a couple clips of that where he comes behind the ball and then around the side and then uses the finger pads really to kind of influence the ball, right? And lets the fingertip and the finger pads. It's really fascinating. But we have another super chat as we start wrapping up. Your Highness Charles, thank you so much. Charles, all right. What do you guys think Halliburton's ceiling is?
So would you want me to like quantify it with a player comp or like level of all NBA?
What would your comp be? Because it's hard. He's unique.
He is unique.
I don't know if there's a great comp for him. Magic is not it, is it?
I'm trying to think. I mean, he's a three-level. I mean, he's a very efficient shooter from three, so it makes it like hard to compare him to Magic. Right. And he doesn't, and also he never plays with his back to the basket from outside like Magic did. Like he's always facing.
Right. That's
that's
not it.
But anyway, I think he could get to like all NBA first team level. Like I think that's I don't think he has the same ceiling as like Ann Edwards. But,
right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guards out there on the top that he'd have to try and get over, which is hard. But this year he's been playing terrific. He's got to get back on the court. I got to see him alongside Siakam. I really want to find out what we got there for the few games of data. And
all NBA first team, though. I think he could get.
Yeah, I mean, all-star, for sure.
I mean, he was that already. Yeah.
So, so I think his ceiling is his ceiling, which is I think he's probably getting pretty close to it, right? Which is damn good.
Yeah, I mean, just the ability to make everybody around him better in that system, and to be like such a great shooter. On top of that, could play on the ball, could play off the ball.
Yep.
He kind of has that, like he has that Jokic impact from a guard perspective, like just making the right passes at a very high level.
Very much that they operate around him a lot, which is great. Right. And I'm anxious to see if they can figure some things out between now and the playoffs and then, really be ready to go. They might lack a little experience, but they can really, they can hurt some teams. All right. Last one. We have our last super chat from a pimp named Slickback. Great to see you. Thank you so much for being there. Very generous of you for the super chat. Thank you. Hey, fellas, do you think the big man is finally taking the back of the NBA again? It seems like a lot of the best teams are led by elite centers and fours. Maybe. I mean, we're talking about like Yama's back and then Chet and we got the Embiid, Jokic.
I think we're going further and further away from having traditional positions, and the NBA is all about meshing skill sets and tendencies and personalities. So it's hard to even say like who is a center. Does Jokic really play like a center from what we understand the definition to be back in the day? I don't really think so.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, he's high post, he's low post, he rolls. He handles the ball a little bit. That's the only difference, and maybe occasional three.
I mean, that's a huge difference. He's playing like point center.
Yeah, I mean, 80% of his game is exactly like you saw in the 70s, how centers played. As a hub, everyone ran around like Kareem.
Even Jokic doesn't shoot a lot of threes. He shoots more threes than centers back in the 80s.
He does. That's the one thing you can say. He doesn't do it a lot, but the one thing is, and remember like Bill Laimbeer even would go out. He wouldn't go to the three, and stupidly enough, he would shoot the long twos. And he was good at them. It would not have been hard for him to get back, and he did a little bit. But
I think we could find a few differences between him and like Robert Parrish, right? And those type of setters. Like he grabs the rebound and goes and then initiates offense and then he shoots more threes and he handles the ball more. He even like Bill Walton was another great passer, but the difference between him and Bill Walton is he could make the pass off the dribble, right?
Yeah.
And off attacking closeouts.
So, right. Okay. So there's a ball handling aspect of this. So they didn't let the big guys do back then anyway. But like so much of it is back to the basket, low post, high post splits, so much of it that it looked like, if you were to watch this, in a time machine, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's, whatever. Now, if the big men back then got to see him shooting threes, yeah, they'd be like, what is that? And but the ball up.
Yeah. But to your point about Jalen Brunson being the best post player, like that doesn't make Jalen Brunson a center. You know what I mean? It's like everybody has all the traits now or whatever trait you want to have. And it's like, it's just different style. It's hard to like compare to back then.
Fair enough. So I guess what is your answer? Has the big man kind of taken back over the NBA?
Yeah, because when you're big and you have all the skills, I mean, you're going to be better than the little with all the skills. And that's why it's tough for like, even Becky Hammond talked about this, right? Like it's tough for a team to be led by a guy Brunson's size.
Yeah.
Even though he has all the skills.
I just think that it's, the skill has sort of taken back over. So now all those big guys, even like Durant is a good example of somebody who would have been Robert Parrish back in the day. And luckily enough, they were allowing him to be a guard and learn the guard skills. And then here we are.
He almost was the one who changed it, right? In a lot of ways.
Probably. I mean, I remember.
Like there's no Chet and Wemby if there isn't him, probably.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. There's probably somebody. But I mean, listen, we've had like 6'10" guys handle the ball and be passers a lot. In the 90s, you had Tony Kukoc, you had Schrempf, you had the Euro guys, obviously. But you did have some big guys. What's his face? The guy who was shooting threes was Sabonis, the father.
He was already older when he got in the league.
Yeah, but he was playing a little bit like that, where he's passing from the high post and making him awesome passes and shooting threes, handling the ball.
The difference
is like Jokic.
The difference between him and Jokic was more off the dribble, right? With the pass.
Yeah, but listen, Sabonis could put the ball down too. Unfortunately, he was so slow at that point. But you had the early footage of Sabonis. He looked like a lot like he was way more athletic than Jokic. So we would have had a Jokic before Jokic if he hadn't gotten hurt.
So maybe that's why Sabonis is Dollar Tree Jokic, or they call him Jokic Light, right? Because he learned from his dad.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the Domantas Sabonis, doesn't play as much like his dad. He does a little bit, but also he's much more. I mean, at least from what we saw for Portland, the dad he didn't bruise and bang like Sabonis does now, and really overtly trying to get your shoulder into the other guy's chest and knock him off. I would say that the father was a little bit more finesse, which is interesting. And I would like to see Domantas have a little bit more finesse, develop more of the outside shot, develop a little bit more of the passing from the high post that his dad had. He does it, but I can't picturing right now in the Kings. I'm having trouble seeing a lot of those really nifty high post passes that you would see like Bogut do and that kind of stuff.
I remember Sabonis a lot of this. Like he would hold it high and make a lot of great passes from here. Is that right?
Your father?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He had all manner. He was a lot like Jokic. He really was. Whatever they do over there to train, it really helps.
Okay.
All right. You got to go.
Yeah.
All right, man. Awesome stuff. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys all for all the super chats. Really, really appreciate it. Helps us keep the show going. We'll be back with you again probably next Monday, right?
Let's do next Monday.
Other than that, thanks everybody for being here. Thank you, Combo. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel. We're a conversation. You in?